Welcome to our yearly traditional discussion panel. And this year we have, on my left, Maciej Michalski.
Hey, guys.
We have Lisette Sutherland, and she accepted the invitation at the very last moment, so we are especially grateful to her. Kevin Goldsmith, our keynote speaker.
Thank you.
Angel Medinilla, the most energetic guy ever.
Not anymore.
And Stephen Parry. And we'll be talking about stuff related to Agile. There was this yellow board in the hall, and some of you were brave enough to leave some questions. But before we get to them, I will abuse my role as a host. And there's something that has been bothering me for a while. And yesterday I heard something that made it into a nagging problem. And I want to share that with you and see and hear what is your reaction to that. So a colleague from my company, Code Sprinters, he's a software developer, and that's his first Agile conference. And we were talking last night over, well, some drinks, and he said, well, it's a very nice conference, but I'm surprised I'm not meeting any of my friends from the software development world, and especially guys that I used to run into on software development conferences. And I have this feeling that those are two different worlds. The world of software developers and the world of Scrum Master and Agile coaches are two separate worlds. And this got me thinking because just over the last couple of weeks, I ran into two companies that have Agile coaches and Scrum Master, different units, not part of IT, a separate unit. And just yesterday, someone walked up to me and said that in his company, this is the change they are now implementing. And then Kevin was speaking yesterday morning that Agile has become a smelly word among developers, and he had to sneak it in without using it. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I expressed my thoughts, I think. I want to clarify. I think I wasn't talking about hiding the Agile from the developers so much as hiding it from the rest of the company. So I think that they wouldn't understand the concepts of Agile. I think the CEO at one point said to me, this hippy-dippy, like bongo drums kind of stuff when he thought about what Agile was. And so I wanted to kind of sneak it in, not only, but mostly for the rest of the companies. The developers knew what Agile was, they just had it wrong most of the time. They've been taught badly by other companies. And so it wasn't that I was trying to hide it from them. So I go to a lot of software development conferences because I am an engineering manager. I see some Agile talks there, but I mean, if I was a software developer, I don't know how much, to be honest, I don't know how much value, no offense to all of you, I don't know how much value I'd get from a conference that was 100% Agile techniques. It's related to my job, but it's not my job, I guess.
I remember the times I was a project manager. Yes, I was, for 10 years. And I'm trying to make a parallel when I went to project management conferences. And sometimes you met technical people there, but most of the time there were project managers because it's like, this is what we do. And for me, Agile conferences, they are providing a lot of ways to help people work differently, realize about value, understand customer needs, realize ways that we can improve our companies, eliminate waste. And then some people will be like, okay, that's nice, but that's the reason we have Agile coaches or maybe Scrum Masters or maybe, I don't know, even product owners. There's a lot of people that are working with that. My craft is software and you just tell me what to do. And then okay, we know that this is not like, okay, I will do the Agile thing, you do the programming thing. It's like we have to work together. But for me, it's perfectly okay if we have like 2 days for people that are working with teams on, for instance, if we are talking teamwork on how on remote teams, things like that. Maybe there are some software developers saying, I don't care about that, but it would be nice that someone in the company cared and then showed others, hey, there's a way that we can work together better. That doesn't mean that we need all the technical people assisting the conferences, but I wish that someone in the company attend the conference.
Can I ask the audience a question? How many of you are Agile professionals? Just Scrum Master, Agile coach. Leave your hands up. How many of you have attended leave your hands up. How many of you have attended a software development conference, a JavaScript conference? Yeah.
Not all of them.
It's not your job, but it's related to your job. It's good if you did it, but it may not have as much content for you.
I think that's an important point that you just made. There's, if you've got a vested interest in maintaining that, and then other people are different. I came to Agile from Lean, having done Lean for many years in organizations, and then the Agile started, and I said, well, this is very interesting. This is where Lean should have gone, but stalled. And we have to understand why Lean stalled. One of the early things that I saw happening with the Lean movement was it didn't give the results that people at the ground level felt. They were overburdened before, and now I've got this program. And it didn't feel as if there was something in it for them. And I think the Agile movement has gone through that. It's gone through its growing pains and its learning pains, and it's had some bad implementations, okay? And this just adds to the narrative where actually you want to be tentative. Do I mention Lean? Do I mention Agile? Because I've heard all of these stories, and I'm up to here with all of this work. Overburden is my biggest problem, and now you want me to learn this stuff as well. And so you tend to defocus that, the method, to really start thinking about, well, what's the difference is it going to make to that person's life? And that's the message that is often missed, especially by management. And when I'm doing some Lean and Agile changes, I go to the management and say, your communication has to be spot on all the time, and you have to be talking about what's in it for them all the time. One of the biggest problems with Lean was, okay, we'll go Lean, that famous we'll go Agile, and we'll take out all of this waste, which is not what Lean is about, as you said earlier on. It's about value. But the psyche was, I won't have a job. We'll clean up the processes, and I won't be here. And you want me to do this? And there's always this suspicion, whenever you're introducing a new method, that what's in it for the management. And if there's a legacy of, we've always done it to them, and there's no level of trust in the management, they're always that suspicious. They won't give you that extra effort that is needed to do that, because they think, you know, do the managers really mean it this time? Because the last time it didn't happen, and some people went and people left. So it's part of the communication that needs to come from managers at all levels, and constantly, not at the beginning of the program, especially at the beginning, but all throughout.
That makes me think, are software developers coming to Agile conferences? That's a good question, and we should know about that, be curious, as Joshua said yesterday. But also there's another question, are managers coming to these conferences? And I think that the impact of agility in management, it's way harder and more important, and more like this is something that everyone in management should be into this mindset. I think it was you yesterday when you put the cover of the Harvard Business Review when they say how the Agile organization is scaling agility, and when that appears, I was like, oh yeah, make it rain, baby, because it was like now everyone is going to say, oh yeah, and I use that and I say, if you had any doubts that the first people in the company that need to understand the Agile mindset were the managers, well, here you are. This is the Harvard Business Review, and they're basically saying the way you make the whole company and the whole organization agile is that top leadership, even in the top management, they should embrace the mindset. I think that we could talk about software developers and also about managers. Last thing, and I don't want to monopolize, but I also think that in the 90s, there was something called extreme programming, or even 10 years ago, and there was like a new way of programming where people get together and they program together and they automate tests and they do something called refactoring. But today is like the standard, like, yeah, duh. It's like you don't have to go, nobody goes to Microsoft Office training anymore because it's like everyone knows how to use that, how to use Excel and Word and things like that. And maybe for many developers, it's like it's forgiven that we are using this technical side of what we used to say that there was a technical side to agility.
I wish that was true.
Hope so.
Is that matching? Do you want to add?
So actually, to just close on the topic, I think everyone here except me is an agile expert. I'm very new to this.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Okay. At least these three guys, they seem to be really the experts. And I'm in a similar position to your friend. It's my first agile conference, so I didn't really know what to expect. And I wanted to build on the point that Steven mentioned, which is the communication. A week ago, I talked to the tech lead on my team back in Mountain View, and I told him that I'm going to be at this agile conference. And he got excited, but it was really unclear to him what the value is going to be, what I'm going to learn. He goes to a lot of software conferences, but it wasn't clear to me. So I think that communication and education from higher management, that's something that a lot of companies should really work on.
Good.
I don't have anything to add to this.
Okay.
I'll just stop there.
I have one thing on managers. I am now these days, for some reason, often invited to like operational excellence conferences where Lean Six Sigma black belts talk about. I'm like the agile software guy at in these panels and giving talks. They talk about agile a lot to your Harvard Business Review. They don't, what they call agile, there is now like you can get certified as an agile Lean Six Sigma black belt.
Oh boy.
Yeah. What their version of agile and our version of agile are very, very different.
Okay, so thank you for those perspectives. I mean, for me, I like a summary or a thought of that about that is that we as agile professionals, and that's most of the room, we should make sure when we work with companies or in companies is that agile is something that we do with developers, not to developers, and I think everyone will agree with that. So let's move to the yellow board. And now the question that got the most votes is many projects and products, one team, how to manage the backlog.
Who wants to start?
I don't want it to start again. But
I can start if you want. I think that the first versions of Scrum were very clear in the sense of one team, one project, one client. But then you go to the world and you have small businesses that are attending several customers. And ideally, you will say, okay, let's do one project. And then when we finish that one, then we do the next one and then the next one. And we all play these games where we see that multitasking is a bad thing and all that. But then you say, okay, but I just can't tell my client, I'm not going to start your project until I end the current project. So I have to have several projects at the same time. Even worse, we are moving from projects to products, and products don't have a start date and end date, so the products are always there, and we're maintaining several products, and yeah. So welcome to the 21st century where you have to answer the question, if we can do 5 things this week, what are the 5 things that add more value? And that's what I was calling a pull culture instead of a push culture. You have to do these 75 things. And tell me when are you going to be done. Instead of that, we know that we are going to be doing 5, 6 things this week, this term, this iteration, whatever. And we have to decide what are the 4 or 5 things more important. I used to say to my clients, if you assume that the demand is not high, it's infinite, then you will start thinking differently, because we still think on demand and prioritization and backlogs as a problem of capacity. We don't have enough capacity. And I was like, if the demand was infinite, the capacity would be absolutely, it makes no sense that we talk capacity. Also, if you think that doubling the number of teams you have in your company, you will make double the money, okay, what are you doing attending this conference? Go hire people. I mean, but it's not the case. You are going to double the people and you are going to double expenses and complexity, but not necessarily profit. So it's a matter of prioritization, and then you have to have a good prioritization framework. Unfortunately, the 3 prioritization frameworks that I see the most are HIPPO, FIFO, first in, first out, and decibels, prioritization by decibels. You all know what's that, right? HIPPO is highest paid person's opinion, okay? So you ask the person in the company or in the room that is paid the most, and you're like, what's the most important thing that we can do? And then he says, everything is important, and then we are all screwed. So it's our prioritization, yeah.
I'll give a more practical answer. Because I am currently managing several projects with one team right now. And so the way it works is there's this great thing in Jira where you can actually have one board pulling from all the other boards. So that's what we do. We have one backlog. It reflects many projects. And the team just pulls from the top of that backlog.
And who orders that one backlog?
I talk to the product managers and tie break between them.
So you are the Uber product owner.
I'm the product owner right now,
Cool.
as a way of sort of handling this situation.
Yeah. So to whoever asked that question, I will also would add the answer is simply choose wisely, and then make sure that there's someone who chooses, and that's it. Because it's a very good point to think. Okay, what if the demand is infinite? Well, how would you handle that? The second question that got in terms of number of votes is advice. What advice would you give to change agents? Catalysts to prevent burnout or becoming toast?
I can start with this if you like. I've been doing change for a long time, and one of the things that always worries me when I'm coaching people who are about to embark on change, I like to call them either the change agents or the change makers, and I'll explain why. I'll explain that first, that the change agents are helping adopt new practices. The change makers are probably slightly higher up in the organization that have some political acumen that can actually clear the way, the political stuff. And very often I see change agents being put in a position where they have to do what that change maker does, which is the political stuff, how to be, who to contact when, and how to get our conversations on the site. That is a really important part of change, and it's not done enough. What is often done is saying we're going to give these change agents some training, and now they're going to go out and they're going to convert everybody else, and then they get the backlash. And the burnout that I often see, there's two types of burnout. One is you get a change agent who is incredibly enthusiastic, having discovered this. It's like an epiphany, and they want everybody to know about it. Okay, so they start going out and trying to involve everybody, and they get a backlash. Okay, but they still keep trying. And they get to a point where they don't seem to be listening, and they can start being too forceful. And they'll start blaming those, particularly a young change agent, said, well, they just don't get it. And they get into arguments. And my job in that bit is just say, look, you've got to be a real wise witness here. Your job is not to change the mindset, it's just to make them aware. And if they're pushing back and it's becoming dangerous, you must stop. And you've got to look to your other change agents to say, okay, what's our strategy for helping this area understand what's the type of conversation? That's the one thing. And I have seen change agents who've become zealots, and then when it comes to their performance review, are marked down because of their attitude. So it's very important that they have a secure bunch of people that are looking after them and looking out for them. The other type of change agent was Tomek's 10 problems, where he just gave up. He'd be in that change maker role where he could influence. He's probably talking to different people. But a lot of this change just takes an awful long time. And you have to put a lot of energy into it. And sometimes you feel you're throwing coins down a well. Nothing's going to happen. And that sense of futility will consume you. And we have to appreciate people who are doing that and not failing. It's just there are not enough of them, or there's not enough communication and support from the top to promote them and protect them. And at the end of the day, there needs to be a duty of care from somebody in a very senior position who's just going to look out for them and say, look, you need to pull back over here because you're getting a lot of resistance and you're pushing more, and that's bad. And it's the same down below. You need to have somebody looking out for you. And if you've got a team that's looking out for each other, you're less likely to get the burnout.
I want to add two things very fast. One would be, if you are a change agent, learn your craft. It's not about learning Scrum and Agile, it's about learning about change, how companies change, how people, how organizations, how cultures change. We didn't know much about that 100 years ago. We know many things right now about how change happens in human society. So that's something you have to learn. For instance, when people say, no, they don't get it, that's called the attribution mistake. The attribution mistake can be summarized as saying, I am surrounded by idiots. Every single time I say that in a room, there's someone in the room saying like, yeah, that's me. No, that's a mistake. Is that you don't get the dynamics of change. That's the reason that you think nobody gets it. And then the second one, related to the burnout, if you feel like you are losing the energy and you're starting to get frustrated, celebrate. I mean, sometimes stop and look at all the many things that have changed over the years and make some celebration. Like, hey, I know there's a lot of things we have to change, but look, at least we are doing retrospectives, or at least we have posters on the wall, or whatever. And then sometimes celebrate and try to think, some things that are already working, how can we increase those? Instead of focusing only in the impediments and in the blockers and in the negatives, go to the positives. Like, oh, this is working. How can we do more of that? And also, it's nice that we didn't have that 2 years ago, and now we have it, and it's like the standard. Amazing. So change happens. And then celebrating and looking at progress is a good way to reconnect with the purpose of the change.
I only have something small to add. I feel like I should add something. But no, I would say smaller increments. And then also with the aspect of burnout, because it happens a lot with remote working, because people don't want to stop, or they can't stop, or they don't manage their time well. And that is, you really have to know yourself. And so when you feel that it's too much, you really have to pull back yourself. No manager is going to do it for you. If you have a great manager, well then awesome, then it's helpful. But we're sort of in the age of bombardment of information and stuff. It's just constantly coming at us. And the time has come for us to manage our own energy levels more than ever. So when you're burning out, you have to solve it for yourself, because everybody has a different level.
Is there something you use personally to pull back, or something you've learned that you can share?
Yeah, I suffer from this because I love my work, and I'm almost obsessed with my work. So I've just had to make rules for myself that at 10 p.m. at night, I stop, the phone goes off, everything goes off, and I just have to set the boundary for myself and stick with it, and there's no wiggle room. I just don't allow myself wiggle room, because once you allow that, it starts to become 10:15, and then it's 10:30, and next thing I know, it's 2 a.m., and I'm still on Twitter. And I've got to get up at 7 a.m. for a meeting. So I set strict rules for myself, and I just keep to that. No exceptions.
Yeah, I think just to that point, I think in your position, you probably have more flexibility to do that. I'm thinking about the person in the operation who knows this program is dependent upon, and there's still pressure. So, and they don't want to they feel the responsibility, and they think they're not trying hard enough. So they blame themselves and just keep trying harder. And that's a dangerous cycle to get in. And somebody needs to say what you just said to them at that point. That's the most important thing.
Good.
Yeah, and I would also say, when in doubt, reach out to other people for help. That's the biggest thing I think I've learned, is stop trying to do it all yourself. There's so many experts on so many things. When I was struggling with my weight, I reached out to a personal trainer. I mean, the formula is easy, right? Eat less and move more. It can't get simpler than that, but I still struggled. And so at some point, you just have to say, okay, I can't do it myself. I'm reaching out to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Creating groups of change agents, like talking to other people and caring from each other, like creating a community of practice of people that are introducing changes in the company is also a good way to share your problems. And then maybe someone who is in a better place can say, hey, come on. Or maybe we can switch places for some time, and you work with my team, I work with your team. That's also good.
Okay, Machi, you wanted to add something?
I think in general, the problem of burnout is even broader across the industry. It's not just change agents, right? And I talk to a lot of product managers who suffer from that. the work is too stressful, they have too much on their plate, too much workload, too many meetings. So I wanted to share that there's a really interesting book that was just published. Many of you might be interested in reading it. It just went out a couple of weeks ago. It's called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. I don't know if you guys mentioned this book during this conference, but it was written by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen from Basecamp.
Very sensy.
Yeah, and it's great. It just touches on a lot of these things, on how many distractions you have during your workday that basically impact your stress level and eventually make you burned out. And they also have a few sort of recipes and pieces of advice how to fight that.
Yeah. Okay. So lots of practical advice coming from the panel. And there is also one option that you can basically go and do something else for a couple of years. And that's also okay. Something else, someone wrote a good question, which is, if Agile isn't the goal, then what is the goal which Agile helps to achieve?
All right. The goal is to deliver value to customers quickly. Agile, thus far, has been the best way I've seen to do that. Someday there'll be another way, a better way, and then we'll do that. We'll all do that. But as you heard, I've worked big time waterfall for years and have only worked Agile since because I've never found a better way to get product into customers' hands and get paid for it, which is my job. So that's what I think.
I think it's about elaborating on that, because I wholeheartedly agree. It's about navigating complex environments. Complexity in the sense of if I know, I use this example sometimes in training, I put this bottle here and it's a simple surface, I know what's going to happen. I know that if I don't touch the bottle, it will stay there forever. But if I put it like this in my hand and I want it to be standing, then I have to start playing with the bottle. I have to look at it. And then when the bottle goes this way, I have to go this way. And when it goes left, I have to move left. And if I say, okay, the bottle is moving to the right, so I think we should move the hand to the right. Do we have budget for that? Yeah, that's an appropriation. Oh, do we have permission from legal? Yes. Right hand, what? Move to the right. Are you sure? Yes. The bottle fell like a quarter of an hour ago. And if you are in an environment where you have to be quick and you don't know exactly what's going to happen and you don't know exactly which products are going to work or not, it's better to have a feedback loop, a feedback cycle. And so there's this acronym that people were using a couple of years ago. They started using the VUCA, no? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. If you are navigating these kind of waters, then agility or any other kind of inspect and adapt, Deming cycle, for Christ's sake, it's Deming cycle. No? I mean, Deming was talking about that. Plan, do, check, adjust, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. No? So it depends. It's like traffic. You cannot program the car to just follow some instructions. You have to be adaptive. And that's a problem for me.
Yeah, okay. Anyone wants to add anything to that? Oh, cool. So I hope whoever wrote that got his answer. Now we have a more practical question. It looks so on the surface. How to convince business users to start UAT earlier, user acceptance test earlier? Have you tried violence?
Violence always works. People say violence never works. It always works. It always generates more violence.
But seriously, I think that question expresses this overall feeling that the business is somewhere there, and how we bring them closer to us being development.
All right, so one thing I'll say, having watched a lot of talks, or at any Agile conference I go to, and speaking as a pointy-haired boss, senior manager, the way you caricature me and people and my peers doesn't engender a lot of mutual respect, right? So at a lot of Agile conferences, I hear people talking about the management problem. And actually, I think the lightning talk yesterday was amazing because it expressed the thing, the constraints upon me. And I'm an experienced agile person, I think in a very agile way, but I have board responsibilities, I have people responsibilities, I have responsibilities in a lot of ways that constrain me, constrain my job. And when I hear agile folks say, well, you just need to do this, or well, obviously management doesn't understand, I'm like, you don't know my job. And I'm very happy to explain it to you and to teach it to you so that you understand the constraints. But there's a lot of constraints on leadership. Doesn't mean that they're right, but the best way to get management to do anything is to actually understand their perspective, to understand their job a little bit, to understand their constraints, to have empathy for them, so that when you talk to them and you want to explain, well, we want to bring, we need to do UAT better, but you can put it in the language that they understand, or why this is actually going to be a benefit to them, you're going to be much more successful in convincing managers to do anything. I think that has been something. I'm not saying all of you do this wrong, but I definitely hear this a lot. Like, oh, management doesn't understand. It's like, you don't understand management. You gotta do it both ways.
Yeah. I agree with that. There's this big movement now for business agility, and let's just take those two words. What most people think about by saying we want business agility is we've got to get the business to understand agility. And I think it's the other way around. I think the agile people need to understand business. And I think there'll be a meeting of minds there.
I just want to add one thing, which is in the practical side, sell the problem, not the solution. We need to do a user acceptance testing. I listen that it doesn't speak to me. I'm like, probably some kind of problem you have. But if you are like, hey, our last 7 products flopped and we lost $5 million, and you're like, what? Then suddenly I'm super interested in what you are telling me. And then you say, there will be a way. If we do the user acceptance testing, probably we will figure out if the product is going to work or not. And now suddenly I'm really, really interested. But you sell the problem, not the solution. How many people in the world want to diet, for instance? How many of you want to diet? Nobody wants to diet. Diet is awful. But you want to lose some weight, and you want to look good, and you want to be healthy, and that's the problem. So don't sell the diet, sell the results of the diet. That's what you want.
Yeah, I think it's important. Every time you're trying to sell something and convince someone to do something, it's really, really useful to focus on the incentives that these people have, right? What motivates them. And the 2 examples that you gave is exactly that, right?
Cool. And I was thinking, if you come to me, hey, Angel, I want you to do something, I'm like, why? Because suddenly it's your interest. You are telling me that I have to do, but if you say, hey, Angel, what do you want? What's your problem? Then suddenly I'm super more interested and relaxed. It's a way of building empathy. I care about your needs. Right.
Yeah, Zig Ziglar is one of the most famous salesmen of all times, and he always says, you got to listen to WIIFM, which is What's in It for Me Radio. What's in it for you?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah, but you're right that there's not enough understanding of business, which I see in agile professionals frequently drawing CEOs as gods, suggesting that they are omniscient, omnipotent, whereas that's not true because they have stakeholders behind and above them, and those stakeholders require something of them.
CEOs work
they
for
are
the
not,
board.
They are not out there. That's a very good point. So basically, to summarize using Angel's language, go and talk to people. There are people. Go and talk to them, and try to use the language that they would understand. Another one from our ELO board: how to meet conflicting goals of self-development as a specialist and teamwork in Scrum, which I find I don't understand why it's conflicting, but maybe you do.
Can you repeat the question?
How to meet conflicting goals of self-development as a specialist and teamwork in Scrum.
Yeah. Okay. I get it.
Yeah. I don't think those are conflicting goals necessarily. I mean, if it depends how you define self-development. I guess. If you can find ways to improve and develop yourself professionally within the context of the work that the team needs to do, then that should be very well aligned. It may take you a little bit longer because you're learning something new, but you're still providing value to the team, both in the short term and in the long term.
Yeah. In Management 3.0, they say to me, we are part of the community. There's a model for team development, and it starts with the structure of the team. Like if you have a surgical team, you need the surgeon, you need the anesthetics guy, there's nurses, and then you have personal competence. Like the surgeon has to be a very good surgeon, and the nurse has to be a very good nurse. But then there's, above that, collaboration and communication. Okay, so yeah, I do agree, it's not conflicting. It's different things you have to be doing in order to have a good team, because if you have people that communicate very, very good, but they cannot write, they cannot type, they cannot code, it doesn't matter how well they get along, they're not going to be a successful team. So it's balancing those things.
Yeah, especially since I would say that self-development specialist comes mostly from doing it. Just like with surgeons, they of course they learn from their peers and they learn from books, but mostly they learn by, well, cutting people alive and then sewing them up. And, I'm so glad I don't have to do that. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think it's all been said.
Yeah, go
I mean,
ahead.
I think understanding each other's perspectives is kind of the key to anything in the world.
Yeah.
So when what I try to do, I'm certainly no angel in this, but when I find myself getting really judgmental, I try to step back, and you can feel it. There's like a burning. For me, there's like a burning. I start to judge. And when I feel that, I try to think, okay, get curious. What else do I not know? Start asking questions. And I definitely am no expert in that, but when I feel the burning, that's sort of my signal to step back and ask a question.
In fact, what I see is actually it's skewed in a different direction. At least that's what I see in a larger company in Silicon Valley, that there is an abundance of projects, abundance of opportunities, and very often you would see that people want to work on something, want to acquire a certain skill, they get this badge of achievement, and then they would be put to work on something that they are actually not good at all. Some people like that. For some people that increases stress. But yeah, at least in Silicon Valley, I don't think you see that issue at all. That people can't work on self-development.
Yeah, I think it's also rare outside of Silicon Valley. So it's not that you have to go there and then it goes away. Okay, so another question from our lovely audience. What one thing would you change in Scrum, trademark?
I would change the name product owner. It's an awful name.
Two?
Yeah, Mary Poppendieck used to say that product owner is the worst thing that Scrum has done for the Agile community, and it's about the name. It's a very bad name that creates a lot of misunderstandings. For instance, when you have outsourcing companies and you hire a software development team, and you present the team and you say, hey, this is the team and this is the Scrum Master, and then you're like, what's that? No, it's the guy that is helping them. Am I paying for that? No, this is paid by the government, of course. This is you don't pay for the Scrum Master. This is and then you say, and this is the product owner, and you're the client, and you're like, what do you mean that's the product owner? And like, yeah, this is the person that is going to manage priorities and understanding and validation. And he's like, no, I'm paying for the product. I am the product owner. And then you're like, okay, you are the product owner. And as the book says that, the client should be like, Alistair Coburn's Agility, 5 developers and 1 customer all in a room. And you're like, perfect. But then the product owner has no time because he's in his company and he's doing other things. And this is something that everyone complains about. Oh, the product owner has no time. He's not doing his job. He's not coming to the meetings.
You say you would change it, but what?
Product owner, I would change that name. I've used several different names for that position in a team. Someone managing the 4 problems that, for me, the product owner should be focusing on, which is the problem of prioritization, the problem of understanding, the problem of validation, and the problem of information. Give me information on what's being done, what's going to be done, what are the dates, what are the costs, that's all. And then find a name that works for you if that's your problem. That would be one thing I would change.
Okay. Any other changes?
The infighting. My God, every Agile conference, it's one thing bashing another, and I'm no Agile expert, but it seems like this is a very powerful community, and we could do a lot and spread it really far, but there's so much infighting about what is what and I would change all the fighting. Peace, man.
I don't think that's necessarily part of Scrum, but
No, but it's
That's
but there's an aspect to it.
okay.
The rigidity.
I get the same feeling that in these days, especially between the experts or professionals of the field, everyone is bashing each other, and this is not good, but my model is good, and yeah, there's a lot of that. And people are starting to get tired of that. It's very counterproductive.
Yeah. Okay. So another question that is kind of related to your story, Angel, is how to build trust between client and an external service supplier of development team. Except obviously go and talk to them, right? It's a good advice always.
I can speak as a customer. I've never been an external supplier, but as somebody who works with external suppliers, I think the critical things I need to see are transparency and delivery. So, I'm paying some amount of money for your service, and I need to be able to see what's being done. I need to, even once I've established trust, like if you're going to be late, I need to know it. And then when it's done, I need to be seeing it moving in over time, just so I know that the work is getting done, I guess, at quality.
In the workshops that I give, I always say trust is based on reliability, consistency, and responsiveness. So can I trust that the work's going to get done at a consistently high quality rate, and can I find you when I need you? And then if you're going to add one more thing to that, which would be likability, like do you have my back? And if you have that, then that's a great formula for that.
Yeah, Lizette said it way better than me.
Different.
Better. You captured exactly what I was trying to say, but much more eloquently.
Yeah, my experience in dealing with customers and that relation, trust is absolutely important. And one of the things that will blow trust away is if you've been covering up something that you don't want them to know, and then they find out. And that's always a business risk. It's a judgment. Will we make it or not? Because you want the customer to be confident. But I've always experienced going early gives you a chance to co-create with the customer, and he appreciates that. And even if the customer's not providing you with the right stuff, go early. Because if they find out later that you've been sitting on something and you've been unable to resolve it, boy, it then gets really bad. Because what they do is they put somebody else in to check all your work all the time. So you're doing double the work. You're doing the work, and then you're doing the work to work with them to check it all. And it doesn't get off to a good start if you do that. So don't be afraid. You have to make the judgment, but don't be afraid and say, look, we're having trouble in this, but this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. We'll know by this time whether we want to change our mind or something. And just keep them informed with that. It really is important. On a lot of the big IT contracts that I've worked with large customers, going early has always been a bonus. That really tells the customer that you're not afraid to say, it's not going well. And you're not afraid that this is going to blow the relationship. But that depends on the customer. Okay, some will just, want to shoot you down in flames. They play that, go, now I've got you. I knew it was going on. And so that's my advice. Go early to the customer with problems.
So, I would say one thing for those of you who are in software houses or consultants. The way I find consultants is I ask my peers at other companies, who do you like? Who have you used to solve this problem? And they'll tell me who they've used, who they like, and they'll tell me who they used, who they don't like. And we have the CTOs of the world and VPs of the world. We have a very strong network. I am connected to folks in 6 countries.
Do you have my business
card?
And
word gets out very quickly. If you are untrustworthy, you will find it very hard to continue to work.
So first advice would be do your job well.
Yeah, or if there's a problem, just be honest about it.
Yeah.
Open.
I'm not gonna be upset if there's a problem and you tell me about it. If you don't tell me about it and I'm paying for it, I'm gonna be really upset.
I can add something small. Even before that, making the whole jump to agility, when I was doing regular project management in telco companies like 10, 15 years ago, and we had teams on the outside. I started to say, hey, it would be nice if we were using, for instance, the same development environments. I don't want you to have your development environment as a supplier, and we are a development environment, and then you do one part of the application, I do the other one, and then in 2 years' time, December the 31st, we put everything together and see what happens. And you're like, yeah, that's going to bomb. So if we are using the same environments and the same version control systems, for instance, we are merging and we are seeing what you're touching. And then also I have someone on my side. I used to say, I want someone in our company to smell the code. Smell is you don't have to read everything. It's not like a code review, but you know that sometimes you open some code and you're like, oh, this is nifty. It's like super structured, and it's small files, and it's small classes, and all classes with the small methods and all that. And then sometimes you open code and it jumps to your face like the alien thing, and you're like, what's this? Even if it's working, because then they are going to pass that to you, and you have to maintain that. So delivering value early, like seeing something, I don't have to trust you at the beginning. You build trust by saying, hey, by consistently delivering. But you say, no, it's going to be done by December, and I have to wait until December, and then December, guess what? Oh, no, we need more time. No, if you show something every week, every 2 weeks, you show something, and we are working together. And then suddenly you realize, hey, this thing about delivering something every 2 weeks and working together, it sounds familiar. Because agility, in many ways, is a brilliant strategy to reduce risk. And that's what I would use with suppliers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you for that. That's all we have time for when it comes to the questions from the yellow sheet. And just to close the panel, this conference is now ending. There will be the closing keynote, and then all those guys, as we know from the show of hands, mostly Agile professionals, they will go back to their companies, clients, teams. What would be the one key short message that you would like to leave for them? Like really short, because we have to close the panel. So what would you like to, your parting words?
Chair number
All
one.
right. I think I will share one advice that's related to the last question that was just asked, which is how to build trust. I think I think the answer was pretty extensive, but the only one last piece of advice that I would share is try to make the communication with the outside partners or clients very consistent for your organization. So make sure that if your team is communicating with the outside world, you guys are on the same page, and ideally the person that is communicating is sort of has all the information and will not confuse the client, because that would help to build trust a lot.
All right, this is a tough one. It's going to come out from left field. It's going to be totally random. But I would say the one problem that I see in almost all remote teams, and actually almost all co-located teams as well, is a lack of appreciation and a showing of appreciation. So I would say if there's one thing you leave with is show more appreciation and celebrate success more often. That seems to be something that's lacking.
There's so many good talks the last few days, and I've learned a lot. And I think the one thing I've learned when you come to conferences like this that are very high value and so much coming into you. So what I tend to do is, what I might suggest you take away is take a little period of self-reflection through next week, and then decide which idea you want to try. There are so many good ideas. Don't try and do them all on Monday, because people will think you've gone insane. But pick one idea and try it and see how it works, and then pick the next. Make a backlog of things you want to try in your organization. That would be my takeaway.
I would have two messages. One is I'm absolutely convinced that the need for becoming more agile as businesses is something that we have to realize. I mean, in the kind of world that all of you are working, it's not an option anymore. It's like, okay, you have to learn about this. This is how your competitors are starting to operate, and if you don't do that, if you don't start becoming more evolving and adapting to this, it's gonna be a problem. This is not just another method or another tool. For me, it's a philosophy, and it's a game changer. And the second one would be, and this is something that I've struggled with a long time because I come from a project engineering and project management background, and then suddenly people started talking to me about trust and appreciation and recognition, and I'm like, no, this is about Excel spreadsheets and terms and deliverables and milestones. But I think that it's amazing the change in consciousness that we are making in organizations, and for me that's even bigger than the survival of companies and businesses, because some businesses will survive, some will not, some new companies will arise, but I do think that we are changing the way people communicate, work, collaborate, and experience their jobs and their careers and the time they spend at companies, which is like 1/3 of your life. So that for me, it's a huge purpose, like elevating the consciousness level of your companies.
Last but not least.
I agree with most of those, all of them actually.
Cool.
So you leave me a little choice, so I have to say something, but I'm going to take two. I think it's easy for all of us to forget that we're not management bashing here, but just always remember that the managers are just as trapped in the same system as you are, and it's not an us and them. And as long as it's going to be an us and them, you're not going to go forward. They have constraints that you don't see, and therefore you need to understand the business and the constraints. And you'll have a lot more empathy about the struggles, because they've got to pay investors, they want to keep you in a job, they want to be successful, and their success is dependent upon your creativity. You can't command and control creativity. And creating that right environment. And the managers want to escape that too. Some of them just don't know how.
Okay. Thank you. That's all we have time for this year.